Well, good afternoon, everyone. Jeanette here. We are going to dive into session number 2 of 30 Days to Understanding the Bible. And today we are looking at geography. You know, when looking at the Bible and how it's made up, one of the things that's important is that we understand the land and the sea. Because the geography of where these things took place is important. It's part of the story. When you read the Bible, you're going to see that these land masses and these bodies of water play into the story of the Bible. So that's what we're going to look at today in session number 2. All right, well, let's dig in. So what we have here is I've drawn a map of the major bodies of water and the major land masses in the Old Testament, okay? And I have labeled them accordingly. And this is in the book. If you have not had a chance to buy the book yet, here it is, 30 Days to Understanding the Bible by Max Anders. This is the book that we're going through. And we are on chapter 2, the geography of the Old Testament. And the great thing about this book is that it will take you through a very simple overview of the Bible. And it will ask you to write. And so you'll have an opportunity to write these things out yourself. And then it will give you a review and then a self-test. This is great for you to be able to get it in your mind what you're learning. You know, we often learn pretty well when we write it down so we can sink it in here. You know, I think about me being older now and how much information I have in here. It helps me to write stuff down. I mean, I even write stuff down when I'm going to the grocery store making a list. So that's what's great about this book. If you haven't gotten this book yet, it's on Amazon.com. You can also get it on ChristianBooks.com or any bookstore that may sell this. So today we are looking at geography, okay? So what we have here are the places that it happened. Those are A through G. And the water masses are 1 through 8, okay? So let's look at the water first. First of all, we have the Mediterranean Sea, which is outlined by number 1. This is the Mediterranean Sea, okay? That's 1. And Max gives us a description of the Mediterranean Sea, and I'll just read that off to you, okay? It is the land of the Old Testament that lies east of the beautiful blue body of water. Okay? The Mediterranean Sea is the land of the Old Testament. It lies east. Okay? The land of the Old Testament lies east of this big blue beautiful water. So we're talking about this side, east. Okay? Number 2 is the Sea of Galilee. And if you can't see it on the map readily, here it is right here. The top of this water mass is the Sea of Galilee. You actually have 3 water masses in this, okay? Number 2 being the Sea of Galilee, and you'll see that referenced in the Bible. It's talked about. And that is... the sea actually is kind of an overstatement because it's really a freshwater lake that is 7 miles wide and 14 miles long. And it lies about 36 miles inland from the Mediterranean, which again, that's the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, so that's the Sea of Galilee. Next up, we have the Jordan River, number 3. And the Jordan River is flowing south out of the Sea of Galilee. And the Jordan River travels for about 65 miles as the crow flies, and it dumps into the Dead Sea. Now, many are surprised at how much history has revolved around such a small river. So the Jordan River, number 3 on your map up here, Okay, for those of you following along, that's number 3. Number 4 is the Dead Sea. Okay, and Max here says the Dead Sea is shaped like a giant hot dog with a bite out of the lower third. And it lies at, what he would say, the bottom of the world. It's the lowest point on land, almost 3,000 feet below sea level at its lowest point. So the water flows into it, but no water flows out of it. And so as a result, you have a lot of minerals. You have a high concentration of minerals and deposits, and they do not really support animal or plant life, hence the name Dead Sea. Now, I know some people that have been over to Israel, and they've actually floated in the Dead Sea. Not really swam, but floated in the Dead Sea. They say it is so thick that floating is just, that's what you do. Not swim, not sink, just floating. If you ever get over to Israel, I'd encourage you to check out and go float in the Dead Sea. So that's number 4. Number 5, which is over here, is the Nile River. And the Nile River is a very popular river that we hear lots about. We've seen it in the movies. And it flows through the heart of Egypt. And it spreads out and has many fingers, and it empties into the Mediterranean. Number 6 and 7, okay? Now we go east. 6 and 7. You have the Tigris and the Euphrates, okay? And these rivers dump into and flow into the Persian Gulf, which is actually number 8 on our map, and that's over here. Okay, so that's the Persian Gulf. So you've got the Tigris and the Euphrates, and they flow down into the Persian Gulf. Now, we are familiar with the Persian Gulf. We've heard about it in modern times in the news when our men went to battle years ago. We hear the term the Persian Gulf. Kind of gives you an idea of where that's at, okay? The Persian Gulf. All right. Now, the Persian Gulf, number 8, separates Iran from Saudi Arabia. So there's a little tidbit about the Persian Gulf. So you've got those that form the Tigris, Euphrates, and the Persian Gulf form the easternmost boundaries of the land of the Old Testament. Okay? So you have those bodies of water, those 8 bodies of water, that are part of the Old Testament history. And it's important that when you're reading the Bible and you hear those, you know where they're talking about. Okay? Now, let's look at the land masses. Okay? Because these are also important. I think my favorite one out of this whole thing on the land masses is A, the Garden of Eden, where it all started. They think that the Garden of Eden, and it's so interesting to me that the Garden of Eden would be in this location, considering all that we know about today and all that's going on, that the Garden of Eden would be over here between these 2 rivers. The letter A, Max says, Garden of Eden they think is approximately over here somewhere. Okay? That is so fascinating to me, knowing what we know and all the things that have been going on that we're aware of in our time with the Middle East, that the Garden of Eden would be plop in the middle, you know, right there where it all began with Adam and Eve. So the Garden of Eden. I will give you, he says that, you know, the exact location is kind of impossible to pinpoint, but it was near the convergence of 4 rivers, 2 of which were the Tigris and the Euphrates. Now, if you remember from what we just talked about, 6 and 7, okay, 6 and 7, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers that come down and dump into the Persian Gulf. So they're thinking that the Garden of Eden was somewhere around there. Okay? Now, let's look at B. B, in his book, he has it known as Canaan/Israel/Palestine. This small piece of real estate lies between the Mediterranean coast and the Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, and the Dead Sea. And it changes names throughout the Old Testament. In Genesis, it's called Canaan. After the Hebrew people established themselves in the land, which you'll read about in the book of Joshua, when they conquered the land, it becomes known as Israel. 1,300 years later, at the beginning of the New Testament, it's called Palestine. Now, I'm not here to debate all of what it's called now and the stuff that's going on between the two. That's for somebody much smarter than me, okay? We're just going by the events and the times in the Bible as far as the landmass. So we're talking about this area right up in here, B, okay? In between the Mediterranean and this sea mass here, okay? Now C on our map in this area is Jerusalem. And everyone is familiar, or should be familiar, with the word and the name Jerusalem, especially today, with all that has been in the news about Jerusalem here lately. So that kind of gives you an idea. It's located just off the northwestern shoulder of the Dead Sea, and it's nestled in the central mountains of Israel. It's so central to the story of the Old Testament that it has to be identified, and it is the capital of the nation of Israel. Now D, we have, and Max says, this is the grand dame of ancient civilization, Egypt, because it plays a central role in the history of the Old Testament, and that would be D. So if the Nile River, which flowed through the middle of Egypt, was number 5, then it's safe to say that Egypt is over here, okay? All right, next we have Assyria. Located at the headwaters of the Tigris and the Euphrates, this great world power is notable in the Old Testament for conquering the northern kingdom of Israel and dispersing her people to the 4 winds. Okay, and that would be the letter E, Assyria. And that would be up there. Okay, now it's interesting to note that Assyria doesn't really exist anymore as Assyria. It eventually got taken over, conquered, but we'll learn about that further on down in our book. F, and this is another fascinating one, Babylonia. Another gigantic world power. This fabulous, albeit short-lived nation, they conquered Assyria. Okay? It also conquered the southern kingdom of Judah 136 years after Assyria conquered the northern kingdom. What we'll talk about going forward in the next couple of weeks is the division of Israel into northern kingdom and southern kingdom, because you had 10 tribes in the northern. When the 12 tribes came out of Israel, and we'll talk about the Exodus, when they came out of Egypt, we'll talk about the Exodus, and they settled in the promised land, okay? Eventually, due to several things that we'll look at later on, they split into a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. And 10 tribes of the 12 total, they were known as the northern kingdom, and 2 tribes were known as the southern. And you had them conquered eventually. And we'll get to that as we go into the other eras of the Old Testament. But we are just talking about geography for today. So Babylonia, okay? And Babylonia being letter F on our map, which is right there. Now it's interesting, Babylon, modern day Iraq, okay, to give you an idea. And that'll be another thing when we move forward. You're going to see the modern day names of these cities that were in the Old Testament. And you'll go, I know where that's at. I've heard of it. I've heard of Iraq, Iran, Syria, Turkey, the Jordan, Lebanon. You'll see on our map in the coming lessons where those places are and the modern day names that have taken over the Old Testament names. Some of them haven't changed, like Egypt. We still know Egypt exists today. And so it'll be interesting. I think you'll find that interesting when we get to that point. At least I hope so. I know I do. I'm just like, wow, now I kind of have a better understanding of what we're talking about. You know, when we get to one of the things I'll just tell you is when we get to the modern day names of that stuff, when you look at that and you realize that Iran and Iraq and Turkey up here and Egypt over here and Saudi Arabia in here, and you have Lebanon and Jordan and all of these places over here, and you have Israel over here, you know, I kind of think about it and I go, it's no wonder that all these big, Russia is up in here, it's no wonder those places just want to get rid of little Israel. It's just a little dot on the map compared to these big land masses and big countries. So it all starts to come together and you go, now I get it. I get it. So, all right. And then, let's see. G, Persia. The final historical superpower of the Old Testament is located at the north bank of the Persian Gulf. Persia comes into play when they conquer Babylonia. And by allowing the Hebrews that had been captured in Babylonia to rebuild their city of Jerusalem and reinstate temple worship. Okay, so Persia down here at G, over here, they conquer Babylonia, F, and the Israelites that had been brought over, exiled from here, the Promised Land, they had been brought all the way over here, okay? When Persia conquers Babylonia, who had conquered all these people over here, Persia says, you can go back. Go back home. You can if you want to. And of course, we'll read later on that some people do go back to Jerusalem and they rebuild the temple. Others choose to stay because they got comfortable. But that's to come. So that is your geography. That's how it is sitting in the Old Testament back then, and kind of gives you an overview. Again, not to get like pinpoint down to the address that you can Google. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to give you an overview. Now, to give you an idea of the amount of the number of miles, the size of this, you can look at the state of Texas to get an idea of how much land mass we're talking about. So if you were to draw out the state of Texas on our map, and I'm going to try and do this without this thing falling down, you'll get an idea of what we're talking about. And forgive me, Texans, for not drawing this exactly, okay? But we're talking about that kind of gives you an idea of the landmass we're talking about. All of that can pretty much fit inside the state of Texas. Now, I just drove from Dallas to the Texas border and drove home, and it was a long drive, and I was in the middle of the state. Now, the reason why I bring this up is that you have to remember that these people moved around on foot. So can you imagine that when the Israelites were taken into exile from over here, and they were brought all the way over here on foot, it took me 8 hours to drive from the middle of Texas just to get out of it. It took a long time. I don't know how far across Texas is, but it's a long way. I think I saw mile marker 908 or something. It was some ridiculously high number. But the people back in Bible times didn't have cars. They didn't have vehicles. They walked everywhere. You know, when the Israelites were freed from slavery, from being being in Egypt, okay, and they were brought out and into the promised land, they walked, and they actually kind of came down. Oh, this is the other thing I was going to show you. This is the Red Sea. We read about and hear about a lot about the Red Sea, how God parted the Red Sea so that they could cross on foot. On foot. I'm struggling to walk 2 miles. And these people walked everywhere. So to give you an idea, the size of the area that we're talking about, you can kind of put the state of Texas around it. And that'll give you an idea. I appreciate the fact that somebody invented a car so I could drive around, because I don't know that I would make it. Well, I wouldn't go anywhere. So, but anyway, that is today's lesson on geography of the Old Testament. I hope you learned something. I hope that there's something in there that you can now connect the dots with the places and the water and just the history of the people that are in the Bible. One of the things I would suggest is when you're reading your Bible, look at the maps in the back. Check them out for yourself and look and see. Some of them are marked up with the journeys of specific people that are in the Bible, and you'll get an idea how much they traveled and where they traveled to spread the gospel for us. And that is so awesome. So next time we'll look at session 3. If you haven't seen session 1 yet, go and check out session 1. Hey, if you like it, share it with your friends. You can also, if people don't have Facebook, they can go to www.JeanetteDoobie.com. I'll post the videos up there too. That way there's more than one access point to get to the videos. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a blessed day.